I'm Laurie Lawson, and tonight my guest is Berwick Mahdi Davenport. Hi, I'm going to call you Mahdi because that's how
That's
I
fine.
met you. Let me tell you a little bit about Berwick Mahdi. I just said I was going to call him Mahdi. Okay. He is the CEO and senior consultant for Focus Group. And I love that name already, but you're going to love this one even more. He is the world's first spiritual tailor. We're going to find out what that is. Coach, I think we can figure that out. And human performance specialist. So already you win in the title, the best title person in the world, because you have great titles. So, Monty, tell me first of all, what is the Focus Group? Because it just sounds so so needed today, And what are y'all doing out
Soul Focus Group is an integrated consciousness group of people. When I say integrated consciousness, it's people who have worked in the social justice movement, people who have did spiritual justice movement stuff. What we've decided to do is integrate those two forms of consciousness together, because in most cases they exist separately. The people that deal with more spiritual stuff tend to be focused on the spiritual stuff and not the social stuff. And the people who focus on the social stuff tends to be all focused on social justice and no spiritual stuff. And so when I say spiritual, what I mean is your relationship with yourself, which is influencing every other relationship. And
there?
social, of course, is our relationship to each other. So what we did is we integrated those two forms of consciousness. And when we integrated them, we decided to call it soul focus because it creates a focus on soul. And soul is, believe it or not, is interested in power.
Really? Tell me
Yeah.
more.
Well, power, not power as the ego sees power.
Mhm.
The ego sees power as a desire to control. Soul sees power as a desire to build trust in self and each other in order to transform the way the world is.
Wow, what a
And you
dichotomy.
need power to do that. In other words, you need trust. Trust is really, to the degree in which the world is successful, it is because there's a certain degree of trust that exists that people are not even aware of. That if you got rid of that trust, the whole thing would collapse. And so soul is always interested in creating that trust with mind, the mind that's here to express soul and then to create trust with other people. That's why spirituality is such an important part of this whole entire process.
Wow. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but but it seems like right about now, there's a big gap between between the social and spiritual.
Yes.
What is Soul Focus Group doing to bridge that gap?
Well, every workshop that we do, we start off usually with focusing on eliminating racism. We call it sending the right signal. And
Mhm.
we focus on that because racism has done a great job of dividing us, which is why you say there's a big gap between social and spiritual, when the reality is it should be harmoniously linked together, because we are neither physical or spiritual, to be honest with you. We are being, having a human experience. So we're all these things. We're not just one or the other. But this, cognitive dissonance and this divide is created by racism and ego, our not understanding what ego is. And so we took it upon ourselves to be crusaders for the renewing or the uniting of those two consciousness, which represents the coming together of human solidarity. We want to see human beings working together. And we know that it's possible, but we know that the consciousness must not continue to exist as a separate thing, but as a one consciousness.
Wow. And what keeps coming to mind is in my case, like you're kind of preaching to the choir. Okay. Who is not the choir? Who are you preaching to that isn't in your choir?
Well, let's say who are we? Uh, our ideal client
Mm,
is someone who's looking for answers, someone who has been a part of either the social justice movement, have marched and protested and pushed and fought, and yet find themselves standing in the exact same place they were when they started. is also the ideal client who has ignored themselves and sacrificed themselves to focus on others. And as a result, are not happy with their lives and would like to recover their power and then become effective in the very thing that they say that they come here to do. So that's our ideal client. That could be a person who's also worked on the spiritual side, but now see that, that there has to be some balance in terms of there must be some social concerns that has to be taken up. Can't just be all, focused on you. It has to also be focus and balance on other people in the society that's going to be left behind after we're gone.
Wow. It sounds like that's a big and definitely needed job. One message that I have heard you give, and it was like, oh yeah, it was just eye-opening for me. It was like, don't forget to live your life. Um,
Yes.
and it was like, yeah, wait a minute. I mean, for the last previous 4 years, I, I don't know whose life I was living. I was so involved in what was going on and what was coming next and what craziness was going to happen. And it was like, oh yeah, there's a me too. I got to do something.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit more about that message, because oh boy, I'd like to imprint it on my forehead so I could give it out to everybody.
I think that's such a beautiful message, because the majority of the people that I've worked with in the past 30 years as a life coach have wrestled with, the idea of putting everybody in front of them, putting issues in front of them, putting tasks to get done in front of them, and not really learning how to live. I would say, I really started learning how to live the last 15 years of my life, like literally, being able to show up present to my life. And I think that's something that when we are caught up in our ego and we don't understand that there's really no power in the what in life, what we are, the identities we take on, the things we own, the titles we wear. There's really no power in that. What I mean by power, there's no fulfillment. The fulfillment does not come from that. Everything that we really want it from ourselves. We don't really want it from the world. We want it from ourselves. And until we give it to ourselves, we don't feel that fulfillment. And one of the things that we want from ourselves is to be present to our life. Such a very simple thing, right? We really want that from ourselves, to be present. And we struggle with being present because this world is full of distractions. It's full of what's that, and when what happens is when we start taking and treating what as being more important than who, that's where the problems come in. That's when we start having trouble living, and we're going from one thing to the other, trying to please one person after another, trying to obtain one thing after another, only to find out at the end it didn't do it for you like you thought it would, because nothing could do it for you but you.
It's interesting because I would dare say, and this is not scientifically proven in any way, but I would bet that about 75% at least of coaches did all that, and they went to they built whatever, they climbed whatever career ladder was out there, or they did whatever they thought they should, and then you get to the top and it was like, whoa, what's happening? What's missing here? Yeah. Like Peggy Lee's old song, is that all there is? Because I've been climbing up a
Exactly,
long
right?
time. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I
you
hear.
look around and you're like, this is it? This is it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
So what do you have tips or strategies or whatever you have? How do you help people get in touch with the who?
I help them to get in touch with the who by just being able to distinguish what ego is from what soul is. And when they are able to distinguish that, what they see is that, the conflict in their lives, the internal conflict that prevents them from being present, prevents them from being able to enjoy who they are. It's one of the reasons why we keep finding things wrong with ourselves. We keep finding things to correct, keep finding things to change. And we spend very little time just awing over who we are. Get that we are like this unique being, like really, that no one has ever seen before. And we spend 24 hours a day with ourselves for the purpose of being able to enjoy and be present to the magic that is you. And what we spend most of our lives missing it because we are focused on everybody else, or we're comparing ourselves to other people. And ego is what leads us to do this. Now, I don't think that we can live without an ego, but what happens is, because we need some what's, the world is full of what's. And actually, in actuality, we come into this world, imagine ourselves as a caterpillars. And all of us come into this world to bring forth at least one butterfly. And when I say a butterfly, I'm talking about some marvelous creation that we want to bring forth, some expression that we want to bring forth. And most of us have multiple butterflies that we come here to, right? So we don't come into the world to actually get something from the world. We come to give something to the world. And our lives stop working the way it should when we start looking for the world to make us happy rather than us making ourselves happy, and through the creation of what we come to give birth to.
Wow.
You know,
You should be talking to first graders everywhere from around the world, just to get them on the right path.
I know immediately. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Time to. Well, what do you think were either the benefits or the detriments of the pandemic? Because talk
Oh,
about
wow.
being with yourself. Whoa, a lot
Wow.
of us had a lot more time than we really wanted with ourselves.
I think it was beautiful, Lauren. I think the universe heard the cries of so many people who were confused and looking for a way to home, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, trying to find their way back home. You know, who find themselves on this yellow brick road to try to get back to face their fears, to get back home. And so the universe heard that we needed some time. We needed to recalibrate and re-understand the importance of our lives. So what has happened through the pandemic is us having to sit with ourselves long enough to reacquaint ourselves with who we are. You know, there's a reason why solitary confinement is a punishment in prison. And so the universe put us in solitary confinement, put us in our homes, made us look at ourselves, made us, realize that, our lives are worth living, and we should want more living than we had been, because in our society it's so, capitalist driven. Everybody is spending, 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 working, 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 working. And when people got a chance to see, oh wow, this is what my life is, because people are so busy working that they have no time to really enjoy their lives and their children. So the pandemic, I think, did an excellent job in that. And it also reminded us of how close we really are, and how easy it is for us to affect each other negatively or positively,
Mm,
you know?
and very interesting. I love the metaphor of the Wizard of Oz, because you are following the yellow brick road and then you get there, and just what we were talking about, it's the guy behind the curtain. Wait a minute,
It's
that's what I was.
exactly right.
I need to go back home. Yeah, I don't think I took the right zig when I should have zagged or something. But
Right.
that's a
Think,
great metaphor. Yeah. No, I'm in agreement also. I think the first couple of months were disconcerting, and it's like the merry-go-round stopped, and it's like, oh, now what do we do? And then
yeah.
you sort of get into it. It's like, oh, what a great joy to have time to actually do this. I used to have to for this show, I used to go to the studio in Manhattan, and they closed the studio. It's like, oh, no more show. And it's like, no, then you kind of find a way around it, and it's like, oh, here's another alternative. So many lessons that I think in retrospect, and even now, I think, but in retrospect, we're going to go, wow, what was that? And thank
I
heavens
know.
for it. Yeah. What changed about how you had to deliver your message in the last 18 months? Is that what it's been? I don't even know.
Wow. See how fast it went? 18 months, right?
Really,
Wow. I mean, when you said that, I'm like, whoa,
I
18.
know. I think that's what it was. Yeah.
Well, everything went to Zoom. Everything went to what we're doing right now. And I remember some of the things that I would complain about every now and then. I'm not a complainer, but every now and then I say, I would like to be able to take a little more break from all this flying, because I was flying a lot. I was flying maybe 4 or 5 times a month. And so I said, it would be nice to be able to be at home more. There you go.
Wishes.
So, so we had to modify the way we presented stuff, because we were so used to the in-person and depended on the actual interaction of being present with people. And so then we had to then learn to generate presence through this medium, through Zoom. And we've done a pretty good job of transferring feeling through the airways. Because the stuff we do, you don't want it to be too intellectual, because when people intellectualize things, they tend to get frozen in their head. And we want to bring them out of their head, which is where a lot of people are prisoners, to bring them out. And so to get them to feel something, to get them to, go inside themselves and really get in touch with the person that they may have lost along the way in this whole, yellow brick road scenario.
Yeah, it's like, and I don't know how you feel about it. I feel the touchy feeling. I like to touch and feel every now and then, and that's kind of gone with Zoom right now. But also the benefits. I mean, I would have never met you were it not
Yeah,
for
right.
Zoom that we were on together, that you were presenting at, and it was like, so there are benefits. How have you worked that? Has your audience increased? How have you worked that benefit to get your message out there?
We've actually been able to, of course, contact and work with more people now, because we were doing it in person, and it was a lot of limits to it. Now there is like, we're doing 3-hour Zooms. We can do maybe 3-hour Zooms in a day, and we have a team of like 20 people. So we are constantly doing Zooms, but we also are able to take breaks, like a whole week off, and just, because the pandemic has taught us that like necessary that we build in a certain time in the month where everybody just has downtime. Because, working with people and channeling energy, because that's what we do. We're presenting material, but we're channeling energy, and we're energy workers. Like I got to talk about being a spiritual tailor. We're helping people make spiritual adjustments, right? When we say things to them, it could be as profound as they want it to be, but if they don't make spiritual adjustments, they can't benefit from what they just heard. So we are constantly working with that. So we have tailors, what I call spiritual tailors, and seamsters, who are working to help people fit into the life that they really want to live.
Can you give me an example of a spiritual alteration or adjustment?
Yeah,
I love the title. I love the title.
the biggest spiritual alteration adjustment that I've seen people have to make, that I've had to make, was to simply admit when I was wrong.
Hmm.
You let's say me and you had a conversation, we had a disagreement, and I was trying to be right, and it really created some problems between us. So I could say to you that I got it and everything else, but if I don't admit that I'm wrong, that means I have not put myself in the right position to take advantage of what I've learned from our disagreement. Being honest sometimes is very difficult for people. So you have different forms of it. Me just apologizing to you, me telling you my accurate location, giving you my accurate location, saying what I really feel and think. It's the risk that we have, the little risk we have to take in our relationships with each other, that will put us in the position to take advantage of what we say we learned from going through whatever the challenge was. So it could be, being honest, like I said, giving the right location. It could also be simply asking for help. You know how many people struggle with asking for help? You know what I'm saying? I did that for years, right? Another big spiritual adjustment is listening. Wow, I would say that is the largest and the most difficult spiritual adjustment, because we think hearing is listening. Hearing is not listening. And when people start listening is constantly empowering you to make the right adjustments, to be able to communicate effectively with people and to stay connected. I work with a lot of people who are distant from each other, even though they're physically in physical proximity to each other, they're real close, but spiritually they're far away. And it's because they haven't listened to each other in years. They haven't listened and they haven't been honest. So just those two spiritual adjustments, if they could rectify their relationship, they could transform their relationships by simply being honest, giving accurate location, and listening. Very powerful spiritual adjustments. There are many others, but there's some, those two are like some of the main ones that I work with people because they're so fundamental. They're fundamental, but yet we don't treat them like they're fundamental. You know, we're like Eureka. Oh, listening is important. You for real?
Yeah, would you take me a little deeper on that? What the listening? Okay, I got the being authentic. So how would listening be a spiritual adjustment?
Hmm. I'm gonna give you an example. A few days ago on a Zoom, we were doing a leadership training with this group, and we asked them. We broke them up into pairs, and we asked them carefully to listen carefully to each other as you report back what they were reporting back on, and each person was going to report for the other person, not for themselves. So they come back, and one gentleman says, "Man, I really love what my partner told me. I mean, she was really passionate about what she said." And then he says, "But I don't remember what she said." All right. So I said, "Well, did you really listen?" He said, "Yes, I did." I said, there's a difference between you hearing her and listening to her. So being able to listen is being able to regenerate the conversation as it was given to you. Right. So he sat through that session and was not able to regenerate for her what she had shared with him, and she shared from her heart. So what impact do you think that had on her?
I would think that would be squelching. It would be like, oh. But I appreciate that he felt the passion, even though he couldn't, he couldn't get it quite out. But yeah,
Right. I said, that sounded nice. Here is intention, but here is impact. So
yeah,
her interpretation was, which I've experienced myself, is that what she was saying wasn't that important.
yeah.
So my intention was, oh, what you're saying is heavy, but I'm really not present, because being present empowers you to generate what the person said. So I said, if you had a problem with remembering things, you should have been writing down what she said, right? Because you knew you were going to have to report back what the other person said. Now, the reason why that's a spiritual adjustment, because we are all voices. And there's nothing more important to a voice than being listened to, not just being heard, being listened to. And when a voice knows that it's listened to, then what it does, it allows you to get closer to that person, because that person feels like they can trust you if you can regenerate their voice. Regenerating a person's voice is an important aspect of trust. So listening, it's like, think about back in the day when they would tune the piano, right? And they would use listening. They would use their by ear to get the tune. That's exactly what it is. It's telling you where to put yourself in relationship to someone to be of assistance to them and to be effective in your communication. If you don't listen, you stay out of tune.
Great, 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 great analogy. Yeah, because as you were talking, I was thinking, okay, I definitely get the benefit for the person who's being listened to, but for the person who's listening, it's really it's dropping your ego and it's bringing you back to your more authentic self. And that's just what you were saying the spiritual Tailor does. So I got it.
Yeah.
Took me a while, but I got it. It's a heavy concept. It's like, I'm a coach. Of course I listen, but not always.
Yeah, I mean, for years I didn't. I'm gonna be honest with you. I knew how to hear people,
Mhm.
but I wasn't listening. I had, in most cases, we have what I consider old listening. That's listening that we already listened to in our head. That when people are talking, we start listening to, and oftentimes we're not able to distinguish the old listening from the present listening. And we try to do both, and what ends up happening is we just hear the person, but we aren't able to regenerate what they said because we had other listening that was going on too.
Right.
Like
And
we listening for our answer, how are we
exactly.
going to respond, which is old listening. That's not present listening. The idea of being able to generate on the spot, what your response is going to be from zero, is a very powerful thing, because that moment, if I sit and listen to you totally, and I'm able to regenerate what you said, what's going to happen inside of me is I'm going to have a natural response that is going to be evoked in you from me. to give to you.
Back to authenticity.
Yeah,
I'm liking it. I'm liking it.
yes.
Well, we've got like 3 minutes left, and I wanted to ask you. So I saw on your LinkedIn page, you have something called "Power Up with Mahdi." Is that still in existence? You still doing? Because what you didn't do at the session, that you didn't really tell people how they can find you. So I want people to know how they can find you and get to be a part of this whole thing that you're doing.
Well, my mission has been powering up people, helping people to power up. Power has always been in my view, to give people a different view of power, a different perspective of it, not from a control standpoint, but from a trusting standpoint with self and others, etc. I could be found at the soulfocusgroup.com,
Okay.
where I'm the CEO of the Soul Focus Group, and we incorporate all of my coaching processes, and we call it the Soul Focus Way, right? The Soul Focus Way. We try to do everything the Soul Focus Way, which is the integrated consciousness way to power, the pathway to power through integrated consciousness. And so Soul Focused with the ED group.com. So it's sometimes you can hear focus, but it's Soul Focused group.
Focused. Okay. And anybody can be a member, or anybody can join the group?
Well, it's our company.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're doing now, we're working on membership. So we have a membership offer that's going to be coming up real soon. But we have podcasts. You can sign up for a podcast that we are constantly, feeding people some of this new technology, and we're working as much as possible to bring more of it to the world.
Ah, fantastic. Okay. So soul focused group.
Yes.
Okay. Is it .com? I'm sorry, .com, right?
Yes, it's .com. It's .com.
All right. So we've got like a minute or so. What would be your tidbit of advice to send us all out on our way?
The thing that I said on the last coaching session we were on together, and that was, you don't forget to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't forget to live. The one thing that we all discover, those of us who are still here and those of us who have left that are still lingering, that once we leave, the world doesn't stop moving. Yeah.
Lesson, but
Yeah.
harsh, especially when you've lost someone. It's like, why is everybody doing everything the same?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm thrilled that you came on, and I'm thrilled that you have a message that I think is so timely. I think that we do have a tendency, we feel like, okay, we're focused here and we've got to just do all that. But I'm going to leave everybody with the message that you left them with, and that is, don't forget to live. And if you want to get some more information about how to do that authentically, go to soulfocusedgroup.com. Mahdi Davenport, you are a joy to talk to, and I hope we'll be doing it again real soon. Thank you for being
Thank you,
a guest
Laurie.
on the show.
Appreciate you.
Thank you. You
You're
too.
welcome.